Alright, welcome back. Let's do some quick tips on editor. So, today we'll just do meshes and the three different types of meshes that we have and what we could do with them. So, first things first, we have, if we right click and go to mesh, we have three main different types of meshes. We have the static, dynamic, and skinned. We also have skin bone, but that's later on. So first things first, let's just show you the static and dynamic. So I have the same objects or the same meshes, but one is a static and the other one's a dynamic. So the main difference between static and dynamic is in their physics properties. For static, most of the time you don't really use physics on it unless you want to. Then you have to go to the physics tab and go to the type, and the type we can allow a static would be the two types dummy and rigid. Dummy is your type that's just used as a joint structure or as a hook, a connector, or anything that's used as a point in space for physics movement. Rigid, on the other hand, uses basic properties that behave like an object in real life. So if we were to add, let's go down here in shapes and add a box, and we just press add, it calculates the exact amount of box size that it needs to make a box type shape that will then be used as physics. So when you press it, it calculates the physics, and since there's gravity and there's nothing under it, it's just gonna fall. The other object is the dynamic object. Now, just like static, it has its own little properties here. You can switch the mesh to change its dynamic. Just like in static, you could just easily switch it, but in object dynamic you could switch and save it. And the difference between the dynamic and static would be in the physics itself. So not only can you use dummy and rigid, you have the ability to use fracture, which uses breaking or simulate breaking. You have the ability to use cloth, and you have the ability to use water. Path and rope requires a different type, but you can still use them. It just doesn't make sense to use them. So that's the difference between static and dynamic. The ability to use simple physics on static and very complex physics on dynamic. The third one would be this object, which is the object mesh skinned. Now I have him here, but if you were to just like drag him out, let's just drag him somewhere here, move him up here, and just press F, the original object will have an FBX that I downloaded from Mixamo. I just downloaded and dragged him into our asset browser, and what you will see is that first it's in a node dummy, and the main object is the object mesh skin. I'll just take it out and then delete the node dummy, so I have this guy. I'll delete the other one too, and once I open it, you'll see that we have a lot of world transform bones over here. And if we right click and we go to mesh, these are the skin bones. So let's just click this one and I'll tell you what it is. The difference between a skin bone and mesh skinned is that the skin bone is where, or is the position of a bone inside the skinned object. So if I were to go down here on the head, the position of the bone is right there, but we can't touch it yet. The head itself as the bone is connected, or not connected, is exactly in the same place as where that bone is. But if you'll notice, if we move it, nothing's happening. So what do? We have two options. We can either connect it or we can make a new one. So to connect one, let's go to the bone that it is. We're looking for head, so let's just go for head, and we have the same bone. We just drag the point where it is and we put it inside the bind node that's over here. Once you do that, it highlights green. That means it's connected to a node in the world. So now we look at the node and here, and now when we move it, we'll notice that it's actually moving. So if we rotate the guy, so he's looking up and down, left, right, and then tilting his head sideways. So we have the ability to do that. We also have the ability to, if we go back to the mesh skin, to just click on it and remove it. We also have the ability to just delete all these and decide to choose specific ones. So let's say if I just wanted the head, I'd click on the one that I want, the bone that I want to collect, and just create dummy hierarchy. And then we create our own specific, which does the physics to itself. The other way is a little longer, which you have to connect each and every one, but this way is also the easier one. The other object that we have with mesh skin is animations. So we have the ability to make animations. I just took a normal T-pose, so it has two different T-poses that we have, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to play one of them. So right now we're playing this one. When we press play, it's just going to put his leg in that position because this anim file only has that object way. If I were to move the other one and just press play, it's going to move it in that object. And that's going to be the basics between the mesh skin. One more thing it has is its physics. The mesh skin has the ability to get a ragdoll physics. When you are in the ragdoll physics mode, you have options to simulate physics into each object. So if I were to just click hips, or even if I didn't click hips, if I just didn't click anything, go into it, go to physics, oh well, it's still clicking on hips, we press create, and then it tells us to create a ragdoll base body. And what we're going to do is give it a random mass, probably 60 kilos should be good enough. We have the options between the volume threshold and approximation. I don't touch this because it just gets wonky if we do anything. And the main thing is the capsule shape or the regular shape. If this is off, then you have a very specific shape that's very precise. If you were to click on the capsule shape, it will give you a circular, more primitive style movement, which is a little bit cartoony, but it gets the job done. It's a little less performance heavy. So I'm gonna choose no, just to show you guys. And now we get an object that's here. I'll just press play and then remove play, and that fake dummy is gone. And now I have the original object. Now if I were to remove it, let's say if I didn't like it, just click on it, press remove, and it's gone. Over there we just save, enable, remove it, and now it's gone. Now I'm gonna do it again just to show you the capsule shape, and now you can see the capsule shape. And that's the difference between the bones and the ragdoll shape. And if we were to actually simulate this, we just have to click on all of the ones that are bound. So remove these, or let's just show you differently. So let's say we're playing simulation and we just right leg bound and we remove the frame base. Now it's simulating real physics. Now it's moving exactly like how physics should. But once we put it back to frame base, it's gonna now focus on the frame style. But for now, since we have no frame, it's all good. And yeah, that's the basics of object mesh skinned. We're gonna talk more about this later. Alright, see you guys.